Thank you for your interest in our session titled Everyone Plays a Role, Washington State's Inclusionary Practices Cadre. The contents of this presentation were developed for the 2022 OSPI conference. However, please note that these contents do not necessarily represent the U.S. Department of Education policy or endorsement. My name is Tania May, and I serve as the Assistant Superintendent of Special Education for the Washington State Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, or OSPI. I'm delighted to be joined today by two of my Inclusionary Practices Cadre partners.
Hello, my name is Cassie Stevens, and I am the Inclusionary Practices Project Director for the Association of Washington Educational Service Districts, or AESD, which are all 9 service districts working as one. Our team serves over 140 building level teams dedicated to increasing and improving inclusion and inclusionary practices in their schools.
And hello, my name is Espeland, and I'm the Inclusion Director for the Association of Washington School Principals, or AWSP, where I lead the inclusion and inclusionary practices efforts for school leaders across Washington State.
Washington State has been on a journey toward inclusionary practices. Although research and data consistently show that access to general education leads to improved outcomes for students with disabilities, as of 2018, Washington ranked 44th out of 50 states for inclusive practices. So in 2019, the Washington State Legislature funded the Inclusionary Practices Project, or IPP, a 4-year, $37 million initiative. Inclusionary practices partners include schools, family, and community organizations, and a cadre of professional development providers to support inclusive practices statewide. In the first 3 years of the Inclusionary Practices Project, we have seen a positive impact on access to general education in Washington State. At a statewide level, LRE1, or access to general education for 80 to 100% of the school day in 2021 has increased nearly 6% from our 2018 baseline. For our 100 pilot districts, which represent about 250 schools and over 20,000 students with disabilities, LRE1 has increased 15%. This level of systemic change that has sustained over multiple years and through pandemic conditions required intentional and transformational professional development. The Inclusionary Practices Project was designed to support the diversity of needs of all educational partners, including students and families at the center, educators, and school and district leaders. The Inclusionary Practices Professional Development Cadre, or cadres as we refer to them throughout today's recording, have coordinated intentional efforts to support systemic change through inclusionary practices in Washington State. Now that we've walked through a bit of the Inclusionary Practices Project design and impact, we felt it was important to dig deeper and show a window into how cadre partners have worked together to coordinate and align professional development in support of inclusionary practices. Over the next several minutes, we'll hear directly from Cassie and Chris about these collaborative structures. So for our first question, Cassie, from your perspective as an established statewide professional development provider, what would you say is unique about the design of the Inclusionary Practices Cadre?
The structures provided by our state level partners and project lead, the Center for Strengthening the Teaching Profession, or CSTEP, have really allowed for intentional relationship building, allowed for opportunities to understand one another's work, as well as create coherence and alignment in our messaging and in our services. There are multiple organizations represented in the cadre and funded through the grant, and each has a specific audience and area of focus in the support of inclusive education.
I'm hoping you can share a few examples of how Cadre partners intentionally co-plan and collaborate to align messaging and analyze impact.
Yes, I would love to share my experience. So every Tuesday, AESD hosts an interagency meeting that includes directors from the Washington Association of School Administrators, or WASA, and from AWSP, and our state's special education and multilingual education departments. So because WASA's Inclusionary Practices Project has focused on supporting district level change and AWSP supports building principles and school level change, our partnership felt really critical because crossovers exist in a handful of the schools and districts that we serve. So over the past couple of years, we've seen truly exciting growth where district administrators are looking to implement inclusionary practices at a school, or where a building level team is communicating up to their district. So because this work is scaling, it's been really essential that our messaging and our resources, our professional learning, that everything aligns. Additionally, because of the project's strong focus on improving Tier 1, inviting state level representation from our multilingual education team was really critical this year. Additionally, the Inclusionary Practices Project directors from WASA and AWSP and myself also meet at least 2 times a month, and we are working on common vocabulary, a toolbox for leaders, and then also co-design and co-facilitate at least 2 professional learning experiences each year. Finally, another exciting opportunity has been through the University of Washington's Herring Center, which supports our demonstration sites in showcasing their journey of inclusion. And they've hosted many of our cadre partners over this year, which has allowed us to observe inclusionary practices in action and then articulate what we see happening and the ways that we can support others in this work to imagine what's possible and to find their own journey of inclusion. I know that there are so many more examples across our cadre.
Thank you so much, Cassie. It's really helpful to be able to hear some of these specific examples. So our next question really centers around how our cadre partners have moved beyond what we think of as the what of inclusionary practices to dive deeper and focus on the how, with entry points for all types of learners and needs.
Well, what I'd like to name is that OSPI intentionally supported the cadre to first create clarity and collective understanding of the what of inclusion and inclusionary practices, which was really critical. Now, as the cadre partners continue to support schools and districts with the how, we utilize the concept of learner variability to draw on the unique strengths, interests, needs, and background of the teams we serve to identify a starting point. In remaining flexible and offering multiple means of improving and increasing inclusion, we rely on each other's resources, thought partnership, and expertise to find ways to meet teams exactly where they are. The power behind the cadre partnership is really the totality of attending to each and every aspect of the system. We're not just working with principals, which would be my lane, or providing professional learning for teachers. We're focused on all aspects of the system, and we really rely on each other's strengths and we support one another in our stretches. We know we can call on one another when we have a need for our service and support, and that sounds really great, and we have not arrived. While we're making that advancement and we're building these relationships, we know we have much more room to grow.
I love these examples of what we've been able to accomplish and also that acknowledgement of where we still want to be. Thanks for that. So our next question, we really wanted to think a little bit about some of the takeaways. So what advice would you have for our viewers who are interested in de-siloing their own system's professional development efforts?
I would have the advice of jump in and know that it's going to be a little bit messy, know that it might be a little bit awkward at first, but it will be worth it. So I think we all know that collaboration can often take more time, but is usually the right work and can be very powerful work. So we are so much stronger when we leverage one another's expertise and resources in service of schools and districts. Collaboration, unfortunately, is a bit counterculture, as we tend to see more competition between organizations. However, because of, I think, the focus of this project of inclusion, the organizations leading this work have really had to consider ways to explicitly model the change that we expect to see in our schools. So for inclusive education to be successful, we need general education and special education working hand in hand, and we need teachers co-planning and leveraging one another's experience to better serve kids. So if that's what we expect, we must do the same in order to better serve our schools and districts.
That's a great response. And kind of related to that, how can providers move beyond one and done trainings that we know don't necessarily impact practice? How can they instead model, demonstrate, and walk alongside partners to support sustainability?
Well, during the pandemic, the Cadre partners realized that we would not be able to meet in person for very typical conference-style professional learning that we're all familiar with. This allowed us to think of ways to make our content and resources more accessible to our communities and our schools. We quickly realized that asynchronous content, recorded webinars, personalized meetings, web-based platforms, and intentional and authentic relationships with who we serve was key. It remained a priority to understand the stories, the challenges, and barriers faced by our educational leaders and families as they walk through the unprecedented aspects of the pandemic. And we certainly knew that they needed to feel less alone. Inclusion and equity were critical priorities to stay focused on, and because of our intentional shift to walk alongside our schools and districts, we found our service and delivery module far more effective. Creating continuous cycles of inquiry with cohorts who learned not only within their context, but from one another was another critical shift in our service models. We realized the power of shared learning, whether in person or on Zoom, was just heady. And we continue to find ways now to bring multiple learners together to build relationships and reciprocity in learning.
And what has it meant to be nimble in this work and to leverage teachable moments and include a cross-section of content experts?
Goodness, this just makes me think about, working during a global pandemic put a few kinks in our plan for this project. However, like Chris just spoke to, there were so many silver linings that came from the way that we were forced to kind of rethink our service and delivery models. We had to figure out how to support schools and districts with systems change and school improvement work in arguably some of the most challenging and unpredictable times in education. And the more our team learned and applied Universal Design for Learning, or UDL, to our internal structures, the more we realized that this was the answer. So being nimble became constantly considering the options and choices for our adult learners. Our service is grounded in authentic relationships that honor the unique strengths and needs of each of the schools that we work with. We have relied heavily on national expertise on Universal Design for Learning and inclusionary practices using CAST, Novak Education, and Shelley Moore's work. Our professional learning experiences are designed using UDL, and many teachable moments have occurred when the light bulb goes off for our adult learners, and they realize that they are part of a universally designed lesson.
That sounds so inspiring. And I love this common thread of how not only are you teaching the skills, but modeling it in real time so that your partners can experience it and see how they might apply it in their own work.
Yes, exactly.
And so our last couple of questions has been, what has been your biggest lesson learned throughout this work?
There are so many lessons, but the biggest one and the greatest takeaway is the power of collective advocacy, voice, and lift. It's simply not enough for one part of a system to take on professional learning by itself. When we come together to build shared vision, language, and understanding, our ability to shift becomes much greater beyond our own work. We are effectively unsiloing our work to find points of connection to build cohesion amongst the system. And that has just been really a privilege in all my years of education to be a part of, to watch this braiding of all the work together.
Well said, Chris. I can share that from my perspective, and my being able to be part of this project has been incredibly rewarding, and a big part of that has been being able to connect with across all of these different partners and organizations and see how people can bring a vision together. So I'm just really grateful for both of you and all of our Cadre partners.
Thank you, Tania.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so as we wrap up our time with you, we invite you to learn more about the Inclusionary Practices Project by visiting our webpage. The handout posted with this event lists all of our Cadre partners and the audiences they serve, and each Cadre partner has a rich set of resources and information supporting inclusionary practices. You'll find templates, professional learning experiences, materials, videos, everything that you'll need to support making inclusion a reality. So we hope that you'll check it out.
Lastly, Tania, Cassie, and I, along with Washington's Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction and our Inclusionary Professional Practices Project Cadre members, would like to thank the Office of Special Education Programs for inviting us to share our collective and continued learning journey of leading for inclusive practices. We truly hope you find insights that will support you and your system on your journey to improve inclusive education. Thank you.
I wanted to take a few moments to walk you through the handout that we will be posting as a companion to this recorded session. The handout includes the title for our session, as well as the name, role, and contact information for each of our presenters today, myself, Cassie, and Chris. The next section of the handout goes into a little bit about the description of today's session, what we tried to center around the intentional co-design and collaboration of our professional development partners. And as we move down through the handout, it also talks a little bit about some of our takeaways and learning. And most importantly, it includes live links for our Inclusionary Practices Project webpage, as well as the direct links to the individual projects of our professional development Cadre partners. We really hope that you'll check it out and you'll reach out to us with any questions about how you might be able to leverage some of these resources and materials within your own work.